The frost covered the study window like a shroud. Richard Morrison stood watching dawn break over land that stretched farther than sight could reach. 10,000 acres of Montana territory, 300 head of cattle, wealth that meant absolutely nothing. 6 months since Sarah died, bringing their third child into the world. 6 months since he'd entered the nursery where his infant daughter cried for a mother who could not come. The baby's screams echoed through the hallway now. Muffled by the closed door, he refused to open. Richard turned from the window and shut his study door, blocking the sound with wood and silence. His ledgers lay open on the desk. He couldn't read the numbers anymore. Down the hall, his other children ate breakfast with Mrs. Henley, the housekeeper who'd tried her best and failed. 7-year-old Thomas pushed eggs across his plate without eating. 5-year-old Clara stared at the empty chair where their father used to sit. Richard saw his reflection in the frost-covered glass, a ghost in his own house, a living man who'd chosen to be dead. The nursery door remained closed. The lamp inside stayed unlit. Had been dark since that February night when Sarah whispered their daughter's name with her last breath. Mary. He hadn't spoken it since. His children moved through the house like shadows. They'd learned to be quiet, to stay small, to pretend their father wasn't just a shape that passed through hallways without seeing them. The sun climbed higher but brought no warmth. Ice locked everything the ground outside, the windows, his chest where his heart used to beat. The ranch thrived. The accounts balanced. The cattle grew fat on winter hay. None of it mattered. Richard walked to the nursery, stopped with his hand on the doorframe. Inside, Mary screamed herself hoarse. His hand hovered over the latch. He'd stood here a dozen times, maybe more. He always turned away. He turned away now. Mrs. Henley found him in his study an hour later. She didn't knock, just opened the door and stood there with flour on her apron and worry in her eyes. "Mr. Morrison," she said, "the baby won't survive another month without proper care." He said nothing. The ledger stayed open before him. "I've done my best." Her voice cracked. "It's not enough." Richard looked up at her then, saw the exhaustion, the defeat, the truth he'd been avoiding. Mrs. Henley had raised 5 children of her own. If she said it wasn't enough, it wasn't enough. "What do you suggest?" His voice sounded hollow, unused. "Get help. Real help." She wiped her hands on her apron. "That child needs more than I can give. Your other children need more too." He wanted to argue. Wanted to say he'd hire more staff, buy whatever was needed, throw money at the problem until it disappeared. But money couldn't bring Sarah back. Money couldn't make him whole. "I'll think about it," he said. Mrs. Henley's expression hardened. "Don't think too long. That baby's fading. Mr. Morrison, and those children of yours are learning what it means to be orphans while their father still breathes." She left before he could respond. The door clicked shut. In the silence that followed, he could hear Mary crying again, distant and endless as winter wind. Richard returned to the window. The frost hadn't melted. His reflection stared back, transparent and cold. Doc Brennan arrived the next afternoon without invitation or warning. Richard heard the wagon, saw it through the study window, and knew immediately this was Mrs. Henley's doing. The old doctor climbed down, then turned to help someone else. A woman emerged, plain dress and worn coat, one carpet bag in her hand. She moved with quiet efficiency, no wasted motion, no hesitation. Richard met them at the door with cold courtesy masking resentment. "Richard," Doc Brennan said, not bothering with formalities they'd abandoned years ago. "This is Anna Walsh. She's come to help with the children." "I didn't request help." Richard's voice stayed level, empty. "No, Mrs. Henley did." The doctor's expression was firm. "That baby needs care you cannot give, and those children need more than good intentions." Anna Walsh said nothing during this exchange. She stood beside the wagon, carpetbag in hand, watching Richard with steady gray eyes that seemed to see through walls he'd built carefully over 6 months. She was perhaps 30, plain-faced, With work-roughened hands and a dress mended so many times the original fabric barely showed. Everything about her spoke of poverty worn with dignity. She didn't smile, didn't defer, didn't look away when he met her gaze. Mrs. Walsh is a widow, Doc Brennan continued. She's known in Cedar County for her skill with difficult infants and grieving families. I'm not grieving, Richard said. Anna Walsh spoke for the first time. Yes, you are. Her voice was quiet, certain. The question is whether you'll drown in it or learn to swim. The bluntness startled him. People treated him with careful sympathy, soft words, gentle avoidance. No one spoke to him like this before he could respond. Mary's screams erupted from the nursery. The sound cut through the afternoon like a knife. Richard's jaw tightened. He didn't move. Anna Walsh did. She walked past him into the house without asking permission, following the sound with the certainty of someone who knew exactly what needed doing. Her footsteps echoed down the hallway. Richard heard the nursery door open, that door he'd kept closed for 6 months. Then silence. The absence of crying was more shocking than any words. Richard stood frozen in the doorway. Doc Brennan beside him, both listening to impossible quiet. Give her a chance, the doctor said softly. For the children's sake, if not your own. Richard didn't answer. Couldn't. Movement in the hallway caught his eye. Thomas and Clara appeared from the kitchen, drawn by the sudden silence. They stood at the nursery doorway, peering inside with expressions Richard couldn't read. Hope. Maybe. Or longing. He turned away before he had to see more. She can stay, he said. Temporarily. Good. Doc Brennan picked up Anna's carpet bag. I'll bring this inside. Richard retreated to his study and closed the door. Outside. The afternoon sun glinted off ice that refused to melt. Inside. His house held a stranger who'd accomplished in minutes what he hadn't managed in 6 months. The silence where Mary's screams used to be felt louder than any sound. That evening, Richard emerged from his study for the first time in days. He moved through the house like a shadow, avoiding the nursery, avoiding everyone. But he saw them. Thomas and Clara sat on the floor outside the nursery, watching through the open door. Inside, Anna Walsh rocked Mary by lamplight, humming something low and gentle. The lamp burned steady and warm, its glow spilling into the dark hallway. Light where there'd been only darkness for so long. Richard watched from the corridor's end, hidden in shadow. Anna looked up once, met his eyes across the distance, but said nothing. Just continued rocking, continued humming, the baby peaceful in her arms. He turned away, returned to his study, closed the door. But the lamp's glow followed him down the dark corridor. Persistent as hope he didn't want to feel. 3 days passed. Anna Walsh moved through the house, establishing routines with quiet authority. The baby thrived. Thomas and Clara orbited her like small planets finding a sun. Richard remained distant, emerging only for silent dinners before retreating to his study. On the 4th morning, Anna found him in the barn. He was checking the horses, measuring grain he didn't need to measure, hiding in work that didn't need doing. He heard her footsteps and didn't turn. Mr. Morrison. Her voice cut through the barn's dusty silence. Mrs. Walsh. He kept his back to her, hands busy with leather straps. Your daughter has a name. The words hit him like a blow. His hands stilled on the bridle. Mary, Anna continued. Your wife called her that before she died. You haven't spoken it once. Richard turned then, fury rising hot and sudden. You have no right. Your son asked me yesterday if you still loved them. Anna's voice stayed level, relentless. Or if you died with their mama. The barn seemed to tilt. Richard gripped the stall door, knuckles white. Thomas is 7 years old, Anna said. He shouldn't have to wonder if his father remembers he exists. Clara cries herself to sleep every night. Quiet so you won't hear. And Mary, her voice hardened. Mary doesn't even know she has a father. Get out! The words came through clenched teeth. No. Anna stepped closer. You hired me to care for your children. I will, but I can't raise 3 of them alone while their father hides in his barn counting cattle that won't keep them warm at night. You know nothing about... I know grief. Her voice cracked just slightly. I know what it means to lose everything. And I know the difference between mourning and drowning. You're drowning, Mr. Morrison, and you're taking your children down with you. Richard wanted to shout, to order her off his property, to retreat into the cold silence he'd built so carefully. But her words had found every crack in his armor. What would you have me do? The question came out broken. Live. Simple. Impossible. Be their father. Hold your daughter. Say her name. She turned to leave, then stopped at the barn door. Your wife gave her life bringing Mary into this world. You're wasting that gift by refusing to even look at her. Anna walked away, footsteps fading across the frozen yard. Richard stood alone in the barn, breathing hard, hands shaking. The horses shifted in their stalls. Dust danced in thin sunlight. Everything looked the same. Everything felt shattered. That evening, he stood outside the nursery for the first time. His hand rested on the doorframe. Inside, Anna rocked Mary by lamplight. The same peaceful scene he'd watched from a distance. But now he stood at the threshold, close enough to enter, unable to make his feet move forward. Anna saw him, said nothing, just continued rocking, the lamp burning steady beside her. Mary's small hand curled against Anna's shoulder. The door stood half open, no longer completely closed. Richard's throat tightened. Sarah's last words echoed in memory. Mary. Call her Mary. He'd been there when she'd whispered it. Had held Sarah's hand as the light left her eyes. Had turned away from the baby whose birth cost him everything. He couldn't enter. Not yet. But he stood there until his legs ached, watching lamplight spill into the hallway, watching Anna care for the daughter he couldn't bring himself to hold. Finally, he turned away, walked to his study, but he didn't close the door completely. In the hallway, the nursery lamp burned on, patient and persistent as mercy he didn't deserve. March arrived with the first thaw. Ice retreated from the windows. Morning sun reached farther into the house. Anna brought changes as inevitable as spring. She carried Mary into the main rooms, establishing her presence in territory Richard had claimed as his refuge. The baby's coos and occasional cries filled spaces that had been silent too long. Anna set Mary's basket by the fireplace, near the window. In the kitchen everywhere, declaring this child belongs here. Richard watched from doorways and corners, never quite entering rooms where Anna worked. He noticed everything. Her dress, mended carefully but worn thin at the elbows. The way she ate sparingly, ensuring the children had plenty. How she never asked him for anything beyond what they needed. She brought the children to breakfast. Thomas and Clara appeared at the table where Richard sat with his coffee. Uncertain and hopeful, Anna said nothing, just served them eggs and bread, poured milk, created normalcy through sheer determination. Richard ate in silence. But he didn't leave. One morning, Anna handed him his coffee on the porch, their first civil exchange. The fence by the north pasture needs mending, she said. No preamble. No small talk. Richard took the cup. I'll send someone. Thomas asked if he could help you fix it. She met his eyes. He's 7. Old enough to hold tools. Not old enough to be invisible. The coffee burned his throat. He's your son, Mr. Morrison. He wants to work beside you, to matter to you. Anna turned to leave. The fence can wait. He can't. She went inside before he could answer. Richard stood on the porch, coffee cooling in his hands, watching dawn spread across his land. 10,000 acres, 300 cattle. All the wealth he'd built for a family he was failing. That afternoon, He found Thomas in the barn. The boy looked up, startled, fear and hope warring in his young face. "Get your coat," Richard said. "We're mending fence." Thomas's eyes went wide. "Really? Bring the hammer. I'll get the wire." They worked in near silence, side by side in the cold March wind. Richard showed Thomas how to stretch wire, how to secure it properly, how to test the tension. The boy learned quickly, eager to please, desperate for any scrap of attention. Like this. Thomas held the wire the way Richard had shown him. Exactly like that. Good work. The smile that broke across his son's face nearly undid him. They worked until the sun dropped low. Thomas chattered about school, about things Anna had taught him, about Mary's first smile. Richard listened, answered when asked, felt something frozen inside him crack just slightly. Walking back to the house, Thomas asked, "Can we do this again tomorrow?" "Maybe." Richard's throat felt tight. "We'll see. Later." He saw Anna watching from the window. A slight smile touched her face, gone before he could be certain it was there, that night at dinner. Clara climbed into the chair beside him instead of staying with Anna and Mrs. Henley. She didn't speak, just sat there small and watchful, testing whether he'd retreat. Richard stayed. After the children went to bed, Anna brought him coffee in the study, set it on his desk without a word. He looked up, caught her eye. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "The fence, Thomas." He struggled for words. "For not giving up." Anna's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Those children are worth not giving up on. So are you, Mr. Morrison, whether you believe it yet or not." She left him with the coffee and the quiet admission that maybe, possibly, he wasn't as far gone as he'd thought. The nursery lamp burned steady down the hall. Richard didn't close his study door that night. Let the light reach him where he sat. Let it remind him that somewhere in this house, life still insisted on living. The storm arrived late March, swift and fierce. Snow fell heavy and thick, wind howling across the ranch. By noon, the world disappeared behind white curtains. They were trapped inside together. Anna cooked beef stew while Richard kept the fires burning. Thomas and Clara played cards at the kitchen table, a game Anna had taught them. Mary dozed in her basket, warm and content. The enforced proximity broke down walls Richard had maintained for weeks. He ate dinner at the table instead of his study. Listened to Thomas's story about school. Watched Clara practice her letters. Anna moved through the kitchen with quiet competence, and for the first time in months, the house felt like a home instead of a mausoleum. That evening, Anna read to the children by the fire. Richard sat in the corner with his coffee, pretending to review papers, actually listening to her voice weave stories of adventure and courage. Clara grew heavy-eyed and leaned against her father's chair. He stiffened initially, then carefully, hesitantly, touched her hair. She didn't pull away, just settled closer, trustful in a way that made his chest ache. The second day of the storm, Richard taught Thomas to play chess. The boy learned quickly, asking questions, thinking through moves, delighting in small victories. Anna worked nearby, mending clothes, occasionally offering commentary that made Thomas laugh. Mary fussed in the afternoon. Anna walked her, bounced her, tried everything. Finally, surprising himself, Richard stood. "May I?" He held out his hands. Anna's expression shifted surprise, assessment, then careful hope. "Of course." She placed Mary in his arms. The baby felt impossibly small, impossibly fragile. Richard's hands shook. Mary looked up at him with Sarah's eyes, and for a moment he couldn't breathe. Then Mary's tiny hand gripped his finger, and something inside him broke open. He walked with her by the window, rocking slightly, whispering words he didn't plan. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I wasn't there, that I didn't—" His voice cracked. Anna watched from across the room, silent, giving him space. Mary settled against his chest, trusting, unaware of all the months he'd failed her. Richard held his daughter and let tears fall where no one could see, hidden by the storm's curtain. That night, after the children slept, Richard and Anna sat by the fire. The storm raged outside. Inside, warmth and quiet companionship filled the spaces between them. "You were married," Richard said, not a question. 2 years. Anna's hands stilled on the shirt she was mending his shirt. He realized. Fever took him, fast. 1 week he was healthy. The next he was gone. Children. No. Simple sadness. "We wanted them. Didn't happen." They sat in silence. Then Richard spoke words he hadn't said to anyone. "Sarah was strong. Stronger than me in every way. She wasn't supposed to die. Death doesn't care about supposed to. I thought if I had enough money, enough land, I could protect them, keep them safe." He laughed, bitter. "What good is all this when I couldn't save the one person who mattered?" Anna set down the mending, looked at him directly. "Your children matter. They're still here, still needing you." "I know." The admission cost him. "I know I've failed them. So stop failing." Her voice gentled. "You can't change the past 6 months, but you can change tomorrow." "What if I can't? What if I'm too broken to? Everyone's broken." "Mr. Morrison." Anna picked up his shirt again. Needle moving through fabric. "The question is whether you let it destroy you or let it teach you how to be softer with other broken things." He watched her mend his sleeve. The intimate domestic gesture crossing boundaries neither acknowledged. Their fingers touched briefly when she handed the shirt back. Richard didn't pull away. "Why do you stay?" he asked. "I've been cold to you. Cruel. Even you could leave." Anna's smile was small and sad. "Because those children deserve better than what they've had. And because I think you were a good man once, maybe still are, under all that ice. I don't know what I am anymore." "Then find out." She stood, gathering her sewing. "Start by being their father. The rest will follow." The fire burned low. The storm quieted outside. Richard sat alone in the warm room, holding the mended shirt, wondering if healing really was possible or if hoping for it would just invite more pain. But Clara's trust, Thomas's questions, Mary's tiny hand gripping his finger, these things whispered that maybe, possibly. Anna was right. Maybe he could learn to be softer with broken things, starting with himself. Spring came in earnest. The snow melted, revealing winter-brown grass that would soon green. Birds returned. The ranch stirred with new life. And Richard realized, with terror that clenched his chest, that he was falling in love with Anna Walsh. He watched her with the children and saw everything Sarah would have wanted for them. He heard Anna's laughter and remembered what joy sounded like. He caught her eye across the dinner table and felt something he thought had died with his wife want. Need. The dangerous possibility of happiness. It terrified him. Loving again meant risking loss again. Opening his heart meant giving fate another chance to destroy him. So he did what wounded animals do. He retreated. He stopped joining them for breakfast. Skipped dinner, claiming work that didn't exist. Spoke to Anna only when absolutely necessary, his voice cold and formal. Avoided the children when she was near. Unable to bear the sight of the life they were building without his permission. Anna noticed. Of course she noticed. She'd been nothing but observant since she'd arrived. She found him in the barn one morning, the same place she'd confronted him weeks ago. But this time her patience had worn thin. "What are you doing?" No greeting, no pleasantries. "Checking the tack." He didn't look up. "You're running again." She stepped closer. Things were getting better. The children were happy. You were healing. And now you've disappeared back into your cave of self-pity. "I'm busy." "You're a coward." The word hit like a slap. "You'd rather hide than risk feeling anything real." Richard's hand stilled on the bridle. Anger rose, hot and familiar. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. Anna's voice shook. You're falling in love with me, and it terrifies you. So instead of being honest, instead of being brave, you're pushing everyone away, punishing your children for your fear. The accuracy of it stunned him silent. Well, hide then. Anna's eyes blazed. Be a coward, but don't punish those children for it. They didn't ask to be born into your grief. I'm not. But the defense died. He knew he was. I'm hiring additional help. He heard himself say. The words came from somewhere dark and desperate. You can leave by month's end. The children are fine now. Anna went very still. The children are not fine. They're attached to me. They need consistency. They need to learn that people leave. His voice turned cruel, protective shield slamming up. Better they learn it now. Is that what you're teaching them? That loving someone means they disappear? It's the truth. Anna's expression shifted from anger to something worse, pity mixed with disgust. You know what your real problem is, Mr. Morrison. You're so busy protecting yourself from possible pain that you're creating certain pain for everyone around you. She turned to leave, then stopped at the barn door. I'll go, but you'll have to be the one who tells Mary why the only mother she's known disappeared. You'll explain to Thomas and Clara why loving someone means they leave. Anna walked away across the greening grass. Richard stood alone in the barn, heart hammering, knowing he'd just destroyed the best thing to happen to his family in 6 months. Knowing it, doing it anyway. Because fear was stronger than courage, and old pain easier to bear than new risk. That evening, he saw Anna's carpet bag beside the door. The children moved through the house quiet and tense, sensing disaster. Thomas wouldn't look at him. Clara cried silently at the table. Mary fussed, inconsolable. The morning coffee ritual stopped. The house grew cold despite spring warmth outside. Richard retreated to his study and closed the door, shutting out the evidence of what he'd broken. But through the walls, he heard Mary crying, heard Clara's stifled sobs, heard the terrible silence where laughter used to be, and knew, with sickening certainty, that he'd become the very thing he'd feared, the one who destroyed what his children needed most. Anna's last day arrived with cruel sunshine. She packed her single carpet bag with the same quiet efficiency she'd brought to everything. The children watched, uncomprehending, as she prepared to leave. You're coming back, right? Clara asked, voice small and broken. Anna knelt beside her. I'll visit. I promise. The lie tasted bitter. Thomas stood silent in the doorway, face closed and hard, too old for 7, too hurt to cry. He turned without a word and walked away. Mary wailed in Mrs. Henley's arms, reaching for Anna, inconsolable. Richard watched from his study window as Anna said her goodbyes on the porch. His heart hammered against his ribs. His hands gripped the window frame. Everything in him screamed to stop this, to run down there and beg her to stay. Pride held him frozen. Then Clara did what children do when adults fail. She told the truth. She ran to his study and burst through the door without knocking. Tears streamed down her face. Small hands fisted at her sides. You're sending her away like you sent Mama away. You don't love anyone anymore. Richard staggered back. Clara, that's not... It is true. She ran from the room. Richard stood paralyzed, her words echoing in the terrible silence. Thomas appeared in the doorway. No tears. Just cold anger in eyes too young to hold such hardness. You don't love anyone anymore. His voice was flat, final. You just count your money and pretend we don't exist. Anna was right about you. You're just a coward. He left, closed the door. The sound of it was like a coffin lid falling. Richard sank into his chair, chest caving in. His children's words flayed him open, exposed every truth he'd tried to hide from. Mrs. Henley entered without knocking. She'd never done that before. "Your wife would be ashamed of you, Richard Morrison." No deference, no softness, just brutal honesty. "She died bringing life into this world, and you're choosing death anyway. That woman out there loves those children like her own, and unless I'm blind, she loves you too. But you're too proud and too scared to see the gift standing right in front of you." She left him alone with condemnation ringing in his ears. Richard sat in his study as the morning light strengthened. Outside, Anna's voice drifted through the window saying goodbye, staying strong for the children, breaking quietly where no one could see. His hands shook. His breath came short and painful. 6 months of carefully constructed walls crumbled under the weight of truth. He'd survived Sarah's death by becoming dead himself, had protected himself from pain by refusing to feel anything at all, had pushed away everyone who tried to reach him, his children, Anna, anyone who threatened to make him alive again. And what had it cost everything that mattered? Richard stood, walked down the hallway on legs that barely held him, stopped outside the nursery, that room he'd avoided for so long. He opened the door, entered. The nursery was warm and bright, filled with sunlight and small clothes Anna had washed and folded. Mary's cradle sat ready. The lamp Anna lit every evening burned on the table. Richard walked to the cradle, picked up the blanket Sarah had sewn before she died, held it to his face, and finally let himself remember, not just the death, the life, Sarah's laugh, her strength, the way she'd loved fiercely and without fear. She would be ashamed of him. Mrs. Henley was right. Sarah had given her life bringing their daughter into the world, and he'd wasted that gift, refused even to hold the child whose birth cost him everything. Richard sat in the rocking chair, buried his face in his hands, and wept. Not the cold tears of guilt he'd shed before, hot tears of grief finally flowing because he'd stopped fighting, stopped hiding, stopped pretending he was fine while slowly dying inside. He cried for Sarah, for 6 months wasted, for his children's pain, for Anna's love he'd thrown away. He cried until he was empty. Then he stood, lit the nursery lamp, though morning sun already filled the room, walked to Mary's basket where Mrs. Henley had left her. His daughter looked up at him with Sarah's eyes questioning, uncertain, hopeful. "Mary," he whispered, her name, spoken aloud for the first time. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I wasn't there for you." He picked her up. She was 6 months old, and he'd never held her like this, just the two of them, father and daughter. Nothing between them but time wasted and love delayed. Mary's tiny hand reached up, touched his face wet with tears. She didn't cry, just watched him with solemn attention. "I'm your papa," Richard said. "I should have been all along. But I'm here now. I'm here." Footsteps in the doorway. Thomas and Clara stood there, drawn by some instinct, watching their father hold their sister in the room he'd avoided for half a year. Richard opened one arm. "Come here." They came, hesitant at first, then rushing. He gathered them close, all 3 of his children in his arms, the lamp burning beside them in the bright morning. "I'm sorry," he told them. "I'm so sorry I left you alone. I was hurting, and I forgot you were hurting too." Clara buried her face in his shoulder. Thomas gripped his arm. Mary settled against his chest, finally peaceful. They sat together in the nursery rocker as morning turned toward noon. Richard held his children and let them hold him, and felt something frozen inside him finally truly begin to thaw. But Anna was leaving, was probably already gone, and Richard knew exactly what he had to do. Richard rode hard toward town, morning sun bright on his back. Mary was with Mrs. Henley. Thomas and Clara had watched him go with expressions caught between hope and fear. "Bring her back, Papa." Clara had whispered. He would. He had to. The boarding house sat on Main Street, weathered wood and peeling paint. The eastbound stage stood ready, horses harnessed, driver checking the rigging. Richard's heart hammered as he swung down from his horse. Anna stood on the porch, carpetbag at her feet, waiting. She saw him and went very still. Richard crossed the distance between them. No careful approach, no prepared speech. Just the truth, raw and urgent. "Don't go." Anna's expression stayed guarded. "Mr. Morrison." "Richard, please." He stopped at the bottom step, looking up at her. "I need you. Not for the children, though God knows they need you too. I need you. You made your choice." Her voice was steady, but he heard the hurt beneath. "I made the wrong choice. I was scared." The admission came hard. "I'm still scared. Sarah died, and I thought if I never loved anyone again, I'd never hurt like that again. So you hurt your children instead. Hurt yourself. Hurt me." "Yes." No defense. No excuse. "Yes, I did. And I'm sorry. I'm asking." His voice broke. "I'm asking you to stay, to give me a chance to be better." Anna looked at him for a long moment. "Why should I believe you've changed? Because I held my daughter this morning. Said her name. Really said it." Richard climbed one step, then another, until he stood close enough to see the silver flecks in her gray eyes. "Because I sat with all three of my children and promised to be their father. Really be their father. And I meant it. Words are easy. Mr. Morrison." "Richard," he corrected gently. "And you're right. Words are easy. So I'm not asking you to fill Sarah's place. I'm asking you to make a new place. One that's yours. Because I've been so afraid of losing again that I forgot how to live. And you taught me no. You forced me to remember." The stage driver called out, "Ma'am, we're loading." Anna didn't move. Didn't look away from Richard's face. "I can't promise I won't be scared." Richard continued, "Can't promise I'll be perfect. But I can promise I'm here. I'm trying." And the words stuck in his throat. Terrifying and necessary. "I love you, Anna. I think I have for weeks. And that scared me so much I nearly destroyed everything." Tears shone in Anna's eyes but didn't fall. "Can you love me without guilt? Can you let yourself be happy again? Really happy. Not just less miserable?" The question cut to the heart of everything. Could he love Anna without it feeling like betrayal? Could he build a new life without Sarah's, shadow poisoning it? "I don't know," he admitted. "But I want to try. With you. If you'll have me." Anna's hands trembled on the carpetbag. "Those children need you, I know, but not just as their nurse. As their—" he couldn't say mother. Not yet. "As someone who loves them, who stays." "Ma'am," the driver called again. "Last call." Anna looked at the stage, at her carpetbag, at Richard standing below her with his heart in his hands. "I love them," she said quietly. "Thomas and Clara and Mary. I love them like they're mine. I know." And then her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "I love you. Even though you've been stubborn and cruel and scared, I love you anyway." Richard's breath caught. "Then stay, please. Come home." Anna wiped her eyes, picked up her carpetbag. For one terrible moment, Richard thought she was getting on the stage anyway. Thought he'd lost her despite everything. Then she walked down the steps toward him. "Those children need their father," she said. "And maybe—" a small smile touched her lips. "Maybe I need you too, despite my better judgment." Richard reached for her hand. She let him take it. "Let's go home," she said. They rode back together in the spring morning. Anna sitting beside him on the wagon bench, her carpetbag at their feet. Montana territory stretching green and gold around them. The ranch appeared in the distance, house glowing in the sunlight. Richard saw Clara at the window, watching. She turned and shouted something. The front door burst open. His children ran toward them across the greening grass, Mrs. Henley on the porch with Mary in her arms, smiling wide and genuine. Richard pulled the wagon to a stop. Thomas reached them first, then Clara, both talking at once, grabbing for Anna, for him, for both of them. Anna laughed real laughter, joyful and free. She climbed down and caught Clara up in a hug. Thomas gripped Richard's hand hard. "You brought her back," he said. "I did." "You're really staying?" Clara asked Anna, face pressed against her shoulder. "I'm really staying." Mary reached for Anna from Mrs. Henley's arms, babbling happily. Anna took her, settled the baby on her hip, and smiled at Richard across the space between them, the lamplight that had burned in the nursery all those months, waiting for him to see it, the door he'd finally opened, the family he'd nearly lost, all of it right here, in spring sunshine, choosing him despite everything. Richard gathered them all close, Anna and his children, Mrs. Henley beaming nearby, and felt something he hadn't felt in 6 months. Home. Hope. The dangerous, beautiful possibility of happiness. 3 months later, late May, the ranch bloomed with spring's full promise. Richard stood at the study window, the same window where he'd watched winter dawn 6 months ago. The same place he'd seen his reflection as a ghost, but everything had changed. Outside. Anna walked through the garden with Mary on her hip. The baby grabbed at flowers. Laughing, Thomas and Clara ran ahead, chasing each other through the grass that had greened thick and rich. The children's laughter carried through the open window, sweet as birdsong. The house was alive. Every lamp burned bright. Every door stood open. The nursery, that room he'd avoided for so long, held toys and blankets and the sound of Mary's contented coos. Each morning, they'd married in April. Simple ceremony, Doc Brennan and Mrs. Henley as witnesses. Thomas and Clara standing proud as the real congregation. Anna wore a simple blue dress. Richard couldn't stop looking at her. She'd said yes without hesitation when he'd asked. About time. She'd teased gently. "I was beginning to think you'd never notice you loved me." "I'm slow," he'd admitted, "but I get there eventually." Now, watching her in the garden with his children, their children, Richard felt gratitude so deep it ached. The bedroom door opened. Anna appeared, Mary still on her hip, flour dusting her apron. "Breakfast is ready," she said, though Thomas ate half the bacon already. Richard smiled. "I'll survive." "You coming?" She tilted her head. "Or are you going to stand at that window all morning?" "Coming." He crossed to her, dropped a kiss on her forehead, touched Mary's soft cheek. His daughter grabbed his finger and held tight. They walked to the kitchen together. The table Sarah once set now held Anna's simple dishes, wildflowers in the center. Mismatched chairs pulled close. Thomas was indeed stealing bacon. Clara practiced writing her letters between bites of eggs. Richard poured coffee for himself and Anna. Their hands touched as he passed her the cup, a gesture now familiar and warm. "Papa," Clara said, not looking up from her letters, "can Anna teach me to make bread today? If Anna has time." "I have time." Anna smiled at Clara. "We'll make enough for Mrs. Henley, too." Thomas looked up. "Can we work on the fence after school? The west section needs mending." "We can—" Richard met his son's eyes. "Good eye noticing that." Breakfast continued in easy conversation. Mary banged her spoon on the table, delighted with the noise. Anna wiped egg from Clara's face. Thomas told a story about school that made everyone laugh. Richard sat among them, coffee warm in his hands, morning sun streaming through windows no longer covered in frost. He thought of Sarah not with pain now, but with quiet gratitude. She'd given him these children, this life. He honored her by living it fully. "Thank you," he said quietly to Sarah's memory. For them. For everything. Anna glanced at him, understanding in her eyes. She reached across the table and squeezed his hand. No words needed. After breakfast, they all walked toward the barn together. Thomas ran ahead, eager to show Richard something he'd noticed. Clara held Anna's hand. Mary rode on Richard's shoulders, gripping his hair and babbling happily. The ranch spread around them, vast and beautiful, Montana territory in full bloom. But it wasn't the land that mattered anymore. Wasn't the cattle, or the wealth, or the 10,000 acres. It was this. Morning sun, children's laughter, Anna's hand in his, Mary's weight on his shoulders. The simple, extraordinary gift of being present, being alive, being loved. Behind them, the house glowed in the sunlight, every window bright, every door open. The nursery lamp visible even in daylight, burning steady and warm. No longer a symbol of grief, but a beacon of hope fulfilled. Richard looked at Anna. She smiled at him that quiet. Knowing smile that said she understood what this moment meant. How far he'd traveled from the ghost in the window to the man walking in sunshine with his family. Ready for the day? He asked. Anna's eyes sparkled. Ready. They walked on together toward the barn, toward the work waiting, toward whatever came next. Not perfect people, not a perfect family, but whole, healing, home. Spring had melted winter completely. The door stood open, welcoming light. And love late arriving, hard won, nearly lost, had found its way home at last. In the garden, new flowers bloomed. In the house, new laughter echoed. In the nursery, the lamp burned on, patient and persistent as grace. And Richard Morrison, who'd once been a ghost in his own home, walked in sunlight with his children and the woman who'd taught him the difference between existing and living. His wife had given her life bringing their daughter into the world. Anna had given him his life back by refusing to let him waste it. And that all of that was wealth beyond any accounting, fortune beyond any measure, riches that would never fade as long as love kept choosing courage over fear, presence over distance, light over darkness. The ranch thrived. The family thrived. And every morning, Richard stood at that window not as a ghost, but as a man grateful beyond words for second chances, for stubborn widows who refused to give up, for children who forgave, for love that arrived when he'd stopped believing it existed. Home wasn't a place. It was this. Them. Now. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything.